I'll just start by welcoming back our listeners and viewers of the Responsible Edge podcast, brought to you by the Anti-Greenwash Charter. And this morning, I am absolutely delighted to say that I'm joined by Tozama Kulati Siwisa. If I've horribly butchered that, Tozama, I apologize massively. But it's absolutely fantastic to have you on the show. Thank you for joining us from all the way from South Africa.
My pleasure to be with you, Charlie. Thank you for inviting me. I feel honored.
Oh, Tozama, the honor is all mine. When you and I first met, I think we met, it feels like we met the back end of last year, maybe, towards the end of 2024. But, we obviously had a really, engaging conversation then. And I've been enthused and excited to have you on the show ever since. Now, during that first time that we met, we spoke about you and we spoke about some of your background and your experience, and it was super interesting. So I want to give our listeners and viewers, they've got 20 minutes or so to learn about your journey and your experience and the things that you've done in your career to date. In particular, through the lens of kind of corporate ethics and responsibility and sustainability, the role of these kind of themes. Take us back to wherever you want to start, but just give our listeners and viewers a sense of you and your background.
Okay, I like telling this story, and thank you again. I'll speak to that. But I always, every time when I'm given an opportunity to speak, I always like to tell my story first and what I have done, and I use that in most cases, to give hope, because of the country that we stay in. It's a very, the levels of classism, if you can put it like that. There are people that they've lost hope because of unemployment and teenage pregnancy and a lot of things. So I always want to tell my story so that if anyone happens to listen and hear me speak, know that it can be done and it is possible for everyone to do it. I come from the Eastern Cape in Umtata in South Africa. Most people will know where is that. I'm the third born from, I've got 4 siblings and I'm the third one. I'm the first one to have a university degree at home. I'm the first one to even have a formal paying job. So we were raised by my mom, and my mom was a very strict, praying old lady, may her soul rest in peace. But I had a child when I was 15. And when you have a child at 15, the society kind of writes you off in a way that nothing good will ever come out of you because you've gotten yourself into a situation. So I guess for me, it was an apology to my mom, but also to show people that, or someone who has also been in the situation that I was in then, which was 30, wow, I'm old. 34 years ago, that it's possible, it could be done. And I took myself to school. Because my mom could not afford to do that. So I took myself to school. And after that, I took my siblings to school. I took everyone to school. I remember when I was doing my junior degree, I was working. And then I was studying part-time. I would knock off at work and then I would run to go and catch a taxi and attend a class at 6:00. That is when I was doing my junior degree. And then from there,
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'm curious. I want to package together the timeline of events here. So you're 15 years old and you have a child. You're, and again, excuse if I don't know the South African educational system well enough, but you're presumably, you're in high school at that point?
Yes, I was in high school.
And then how does it, so then you finished high school
Yes.
having supported your siblings in getting an education too. And you then went to university whilst you were also working after high school?
Yes.
Okay. And where did you go to university?
It has changed its name now, but before the 1994, the elections, and when the governments were, when we were
Uh-huh.
moving from being the former Transkei to be integrated to South Africa, it used to be called the University of Transkei because I was in the Transkei region in South Africa. Then now it's called Walter Sisulu University. So that's where I did my junior degree, which was become accounting. And I funded my studies myself whilst I was taking care of my child, my mom, and my siblings.
So essentially and what age would you be at that point where you're doing your junior degree? Late teens or early 20s?
I was 23, 24. Yeah, I was 23, 24 by that time. And I was already doing that. I had 2 jobs at some stage, just to try to balance things. Yes.
So Tozama, you're 23, 22, 23 years old. You're superwoman, i.e. you're looking after your family, you're looking after your child, you're paying for you're working 2 jobs to put yourself through university. What drove you to do that? Like, what was, as you quite rightly have alluded to, that, teenage pregnancy, I don't think it's just unique to South Africa in terms of what you described there, but globally, there's a real stigma associated with it. A lot of young women who go through that experience ultimately do end up finding it really difficult to re-engage with their education, to re-engage with their career. What was it in you that was driving you to say, no, I'm not going to allow this to limit me. I'm going to press forward. Like, what was that?
I think firstly, it was the disappointment in my mom's face, and I wanted to make her proud. And secondly, I did not want to remain a statistic. And thirdly, I just wanted to get out of poverty. It's easy and simple as that.
And I think that seems a compelling reason, if you like, to find yourself in doing what you're doing. So this is your junior degree is in accounting, if I picked up on that correctly.
Yes.
So and what happens next? You're 22, 23. You've already done this, amazing thing in getting a couple of jobs and paying for yourself to go through, your accounting degree. What happens next?
Then anyone who knows the Transkei, which is the Eastern Cape now, we know that the very high unemployment rate, everything is high, and the fewer job opportunities that exist in the province. Then we all know that. Then after that, those that are brave enough, then you move and come to Gauteng, which is Johannesburg. So I call a friend and tell him I just got my degree and I'm looking for a job. Can I come and stay with you? And I stayed with her, and I remember I was sleeping on the floor because she had a 1-bedroom house and I was sleeping on the floor. And I arrived, I didn't have a job. I didn't have a place to stay. I only had 1,000 rands. Then I got a job at my first job in Johannesburg was at Eskom. Eskom is our electricity generator. It's where we get electricity. I worked there, I think, for less than a year. I went for an interview, then I got a job, and I worked there for a year, and I was doing project scheduling. That's basically that. That's when then my interest got sparked, because then I was working with project managers and they would throw these terms around, sustainability, ways of saving electricity efficiency. And I was like, oh, okay, this I could do. And also it was in the beginning of the wave where everyone was using the buzzword ESG, environment, social governance. But really no one had an understanding of what was it. And then after that, I worked at Lonmin, which was a company that was a mining house. And I got a job there as a manager for local economic development. And then that's when I got involved then in the development of communities in terms of socio-economic development. That's when I really saw the face of poverty. Because then you go to these communities, there's high unemployment rate, there's high teenage pregnancy, there's pollution, you driving in a location, then there's a dead dog, there's like all these things. And then I was concentrating on the local economic development. And whilst I was there, I then registered for my master's in business administration. But before that, I did short courses when construction management. I did a course in sustainability, and Cambridge Institute that time they were doing a short course that was dealing with sustainability. Then I enrolled in that. Then that's when I actually fell in love with sustainability and ESG as a whole. And as an accountant / business person, now I've got an accounting degree, and I also have a master's degree. I then I decide, now that the bug has stung me, I really want to know and understand what is this ESG that everyone is talking about. And that's when my journey started there.
And you mentioned, and by the way, that was brilliantly described and introduced. And by the way, we'll for all of our listeners and viewers out there that want to sort of dig a little deeper into Tozama's early part of her career, then we'll obviously share links to LinkedIn and things so that people can go and check things out. But Tozama, you mentioned about falling in love with ESG and falling in love with the kind of principles of it, and the potential impact of it. What was it in particular that you were so attracted to with the notion of ESG?
At first, because remember I mentioned that no one really understood what it was.
What it was.
We were all finding. And the first thing that I wasn't things that I learned from home. And when I was saying, oh, okay, that is why my mom used to say when it's raining, you do rain collection. That is why she would insist on a vegetable garden. That is why she would insist that you package your waste in, because when you come from an area where I come from, it was in the beginning of the recycling as well, where people would sell waste for money. So that, in my mind, that is where, to me, sustainability ended. If I can just conserve water, have my own food because of the poverty levels, and teach people how to, you don't have to go and buy vegetables when you've got a piece of land and rainwater. You can actually be self-sustainable yourself, by mere effect of collecting rainwater, having a vegetable garden, collect waste, go and sell it, and then you can be. That's just honestly how it started.
Which is amazing, Tozama, because it's that notion of, you've mentioned about seeing the face of poverty. By the way, it's amazing to hear that your mum was an absolute pioneer when it comes to all things sustainable living. That's absolutely fantastic to hear, and I can see how those early influences have driven you. But to see the face of poverty as you described it, and then to understand that actually, like, efficient, sound sort of ESG principles could allow the individual to actually live more sustainably themselves and live more self-sufficiently themselves. That must have been an incredible moment of realization to say, wow, this is the way that you help people out of poverty, but it's equally a way that you support the sustainability outcomes from an environmental perspective as well. So was that the kind of realization of like, oh my goodness, this is the big opportunity?
It was, because I was responsible for local economic development. But
Yeah.
when you do local economic development, you can only employ you can employ as much people as the organization that you work for allows you to, because a company cannot give what it does not have. So what then you do, for instance, there was another program, we were running school nutrition, but we realized that in the school nutrition program that we used to run, we were buying vegetables, and why not produce your own vegetables for your own lunch in your own school nutrition? You see, and hence it was then when we thought that is what ESG was all about. And as I'm growing older, then I left Lonmin. And then I went to work for a company, and then I was the head of sustainability. Then that's when I realized what is sustainability, because now it was not at a human level, but it was at a company level. What is the responsibility of the company when it comes to sustainability, and what are the things that a company should do for it to be seen, or for it to comply with the actual environment, social and governance. And that was then where the world opened. It's like, oh, okay, what actually I was doing, it was like a smaller scale, but it was the foundation. But also going back to my mom, I don't think she knew what she was doing, that it was environment or ESG in a smaller scale. But I think it was survival for her, because if you can produce your own vegetables, you can have your own water that you don't have to pay the municipality for, and you can actually sort your waste and go and sell it and make money out of that. It's part of survival. But whilst at the same time, it then allows you to contribute to the bigger picture of sustainability.
It's a brilliantly made point, and it's fascinating that we have a system at play, or a system in place in somewhere like South Africa, whereby it can be, and I know that, you know, the time frames have shifted, so I don't know if it's still as applicable as you've described it, but it's fascinating to know that we have a system in which, like, the very survival of a family actually is, through our systems, conducive with a sustainable approach to self-sufficiency, etc. It's an amazing point. Talk me through. So you're now ahead of sustainability. It's your first, you know, role, as you say, where you're applying all these lessons that you've learned, all these passionate enthusiasms that you have for sustainability within a role that impacts upon a whole company. And what was that like for you to go from, I'm just thinking about, I'm almost reflecting on kind of 22, 23-year-old Tozama, and thinking about, you know, having gone from that experience to now being the head of sustainability for a corporation. Like, what was that like for you personally to have got to that point?
And I'm going to be honest, and I'm very honest, Ed. In the first couple of months, when you get that letter, and you're told that you're responsible for corporate ethics, you're responsible for the socio-economic development goals that the company has made. You are responsible for the entire sustainability portfolio. You feel like an imposter, because you're really questioning yourself. Do I really know what I said I know how to do? It is the truth, though. And then after a couple of months, you really settle in a role and realize that all you have to do is to do what the company has said they're going to do, because mining houses in South Africa, they have what we call a social and labor plan, where there's a certain government department that comes and do compliance inspections. So if you said you're going to, for instance, build, for lack of a better example, 2 schools and a clinic and a soccer pitch and do beef slaughter farm or a recycling project, they come and do an assessment with you. So that's when the corporate ethics they come into play, because now you need your code of conduct. You need to have complied with what you said you are going to do. But then there's also within that department another directorate that deals with environment. How are you treating the water? How much water are you consuming? How much electricity are you consuming? What are the other efficient ways that you can implement to save the water? And when you look at it, it's the same concept, but it's the same concept in a bigger scale, because now you're dealing with the mine that consumes maybe 1 million liters of water a day. How do you then conserve the water? How do you then recycle the water so that it can be reused for something else after it has been recycled? How much waste do you produce in terms of tonnages, domestic and industrial waste? Those are the things that you need to report on and be compliant on. Now you're not doing it the waste sorting that you were taught at home. Now you are taught to monitor it for compliance purposes, to make sure that the company complies with its objectives, but also it leaves a better environment for the communities around its operations. So it is a fascinating thing to watch when you look back and say, wow, did we really do that? Did we save 150 liters of water a day this week because we sat down and said, but if you take that water, if you take that water and service water, you separate it as potable water, service water. If you recycle water for certain things that do not require clean water, you can save so much water. If you put lights or solar lights, you can save so much electricity. If you go to the communities and you teach them about self-sustainability, that actually you don't have to depend on the government for government grants, for handouts from anyone. You can actually self-sustain yourself, by having chickens. I mean, I have chickens in my house. Chickens, I collect eggs. I eat chicken meat. I have a vegetable garden. The only thing that I buy is actually the things that I cannot produce myself at home. And that is something that I've learned a long time ago. I stayed at a farm. So it's easier for me because I have access to land. I've got access to water. So why then would I not try to produce food and save money in the process?
And it's such an interesting kind of theme throughout our conversation so far, this whole notion of, self-sustenance and self-sustainability. I think it's fascinating to see how that's played out in all aspects of your sort of personal, formative experiences all the way through to your professional career. Tozama, we have done the brilliant thing, as you can see, of absolutely obliterating the 20 minutes that we had to talk about you, but I have got more questions about you. So I want to just ask kind of one more question on you, I think, before we move on to this week's article. When you think about the rest of your career and you think about what's going to happen from here on, what are your major goals and objectives for what you would like to achieve?
I would love to work with children and start them at an age where they would understand the importance of self-sustain yourself, and also the importance of, which will link back to the next conversation that we're going to have about the gentleman that runs the one is an NGO in the Western Cape. Because if you don't start them at their age, they would not understand how important it is. I mean, we see all this, like for instance, we see all these expensive 5-star restaurants and food and where they would say it's plot to plate. And people would pay 500 rands for just to have fresh vegetables. And you have an opportunity as Utozama, which I'm doing it for myself, where actually that's how I live. I pick up eggs in a basket and fry them from the chicken. I pick up onions and lettuce and cabbage from the garden. I do from the plot to plate myself. So I would love to teach children that, and also educate, because there's a lot of money in waste, and there's a lot of wastage that you see around, but people don't seem to notice that waste is money.
Tozama, I think it's such an interesting, and again, you brilliantly have kind of teed up talking about this week's article, but I think you've made such a brilliant point about the practicing of self-sustainability in one's own life, in one's own personal life, and the implication that can then have upon your mindset towards waste and efficiency, and ultimately ensuring that you implement systems and structures perhaps within the businesses or the organizations in which you operate that mirror that kind of mindset and that kind of approach. And I think that's a brilliant reflection and one that we'll certainly take away from the conversation. Let's move on now, though, if possible, to the piece by, I think it was Jacqueline Lobel. Again, sorry if I've butchered your name, Jacqueline, in Vox, which was a publication I'd not come across before, from, I think, March this year. So yeah, we're literally sitting in March 25 during this recording. Tozama, would you mind just providing our listeners with a bit of an overview of what the article kind of covered? And then just, and I think there was a video as well that went along with it, which was brilliant and we'll be linking to in all of our materials. Would you mind just providing a bit of a summary and then just picking out for you whatever the most interesting points were from the article and video?
In the Western Cape in South Africa, there's a gentleman who decided, he calls his project Green Gold. And what it means, he actually says there's money in waste or in sustainability. Where how I like the approach is that he works with the teachers at the schools, and he gets these young kids and call them the climate change champs, because we all know that too much waste leads to the climate and the pollution and the climate changes that we were experiencing. So he then teaches exactly the same concept. I think because Eastern Cape and the Western Cape, they're all we speak the same language. We probably, our mothers are the same age. So we probably have the same background in terms of being taught what. So he took what I thought then was ESG, and he actually made it a business in ESG because of the high levels of unemployment, the high levels of pollution and waste around the area, where he teaches people about recycling, different types, medicinal types. There's in a video where he's involved, where he's teaching students from high school about different medicinal plants, where if you've got a mosquito bite, for instance, you don't have to go and get a cream. You can actually use what the nature has provided to heal yourself. He teaches them about waste sorting and waste collection, and how you can sell waste and get money, which is where the green gold comes from. And what I like about him is that he starts the children at an age where it's easy to teach them. He works with the schools. And already when you have grown being told that really there are things that are not necessary for you to do, you really don't have to pollute. If you see a plastic or a paper, like take the paper, fold it, put it in the right bin. You can, the people that we call in South Africa recyclers, where their main job is to collect waste and sell it and get money. And with the high unemployment rate, if you combine those two, that you're going to have a cleaner environment. But whilst you're contributing to cleaner environment, you are also making money out of that. And I think it's a brilliant concept that he's come up with. And he's also starting it with the kids. And the kids, then they will take that to home and they will start having ideas. I mean, there were kids that were being interviewed in one of the programs that is running. Some they're saying, I'm going to be a research scientist. One is going to say, I'm going to be an environmental scientist. And how would they have known if he has not exposed them and called them climate change champs? Because now he's starting them at an age where they have at some stage to have to learn and choose certain courses that will further their careers and in life. And he has steered that, and to show that we need more people to say, why do we have global warming? What can we do? What can we do to keep the environment clear? What can we do to reduce the pollution? What can we do to cap the employment? And he did it so nicely because it's like two worlds are colliding, where you addressing poverty, you addressing beautiful minds, but also shaping them to be the future leaders and future custodians of the climate change.
Tozama, that was absolutely brilliant. And for any of our listeners or viewers that want to check out the video and the article that was written about this, highly recommend you do so. We'll provide links so that you guys can go and check it out. But Tozama has pretty much nailed that, I think, in terms of the introduction to the sort of the main points of it. Tozama, I want to ask you a question. I've got a few questions, and it kind of alludes to what you've just said. But one of the first is that a lot of our listeners and viewers are based in Europe or in the US, and we have a small but growing kind of audience in the global South as well. But it's much more limited. How would you describe the perspective of the average person living in South Africa towards environmentalism, sustainability, etc.? What would be your sort of overall impression of the perspectives and viewpoints of an average person compared to, I mean, because I thought in that video it was really interesting, as you've quite rightly highlighted, how you could see these young minds that had clearly been inspired by what I'm going to butcher this again, Thandisil, I think the chap's name was.
Yes.
You know, people were really inspired by it. But give us a sense of the way that sustainability and environmentalism, etc., is viewed in South Africa.
It's viewed differently from different classes of life. Okay. For instance, for someone who is struggling with bread and butter issues, it becomes luxury to certain things to even think about because they are at a survival mode. They just doesn't make sense to them that instead of getting a job, that is going to give me money now, I can actually be a pioneer for environment, or be even worried about the dust and the filth or rubbish and papers and plastics that are running around. Then you go to a second class of people that, and I'm not discounting that within that class of people that are in survival mode, where poverty is the enemy right now, and the only thing that they're thinking of is, what am I going to eat at the end of the day? How many meals I'm going to have today? So surely someone like that is on a survival mode. He's not going to think that, or it's not even in his or her radar to think that I can have a vegetable garden because this person wakes up at early in the morning at 4:00 to catch a taxi to go to look for a job or to go to a job. So a vegetable garden, and he's got kids and other issues, social issues that are impacting this person. So it then perspective is different for that person. Then there's another group of people where they are beginning to know that living in a cleaner environment, drinking, conserving water, using the same gray water from shower to your lawn, and to save water, to save your water bill. Because remember now, you're not in a survival mode. You're in a mode where now you want to conserve the resources that you have. And you say, okay, how can I save water? Where I stay, all the water from the washing machines, all the water from the showers, it goes to the lawn. So I don't water my lawn. It gets water from the showers, the pipes, and they go, and because I have time to think about that. I'm not at a level where I'm worried about bread and butter. And then there's then another group of people that have people who do those things for them.
And worry about it on their behalf, essentially.
Exactly. They know what needs to be done, and they know what it has to be done, but they just don't have time to do it. And then they have someone who does it for them, but they still do it. So it's pockets of different groups, but no one is ignoring their role. Some might not be aware because of the situation that they are in, but everyone is playing their part. Are they playing it well enough? Is there enough infrastructure to do that? Is there enough resources to do that? No. Is there more that could be done? A lot could be done. So yes. Yeah.
So some of that was super interesting. And I think for any of our, as I say, typically kind of Western European audience, they're going to find that really fascinating to just get a sense of the insight, if you like. One additional question on this, and the article and the initiatives that are going on that were featured in the piece that you just introduced. There was European Union funding that was supporting this initiative, the Climate Change Champs initiative. Again, with your kind of South African hat on, if you like what are the views of that sort of support from the European Union in terms of like, is the support offered by the global North, if you like, the European Union in this instance? Is it welcome? Is it welcomed in the way that it's provided? Are there things about it that could be done differently? Is it just completely wide of the mark? Like what would be your judgment of the way that the global North like aims to support the global South? Is it fit for purpose?
It does. It does a lot. I mean, for instance, if we go back to the article that we spoke about, and you see the difference in the communities where Mr. Fakela, I think that's his surname, works, and you see the difference that it has made. It has created jobs. It has created a clean environment, but over and above that, it has created skills for people to be able to be self-sustainable. So basically, if you have someone who's willing to fund that and not to be dependent on anything else, and using the resources that are already available, that's a brilliant. To me, when I looked at it, I was like, wow, this is actually a great idea. How I wish there were more people like this, and there was more funding that would come towards our way because of the unemployment that we're facing, but also in most cases by the lack of knowledge that you are sitting on top of green gold, that your waste is money. You can do that and actually make a living out of it whilst you are also self-sustaining yourself. I think I would welcome it, especially in the villages, because remember in South Africa, there's rural part of South Africa, and also there's a peri-urban and there's an urban part, especially in the villages where hopelessness and poverty is you, for lack of a better explanation, you can smell it. You see it's bad. Those kind of funding and initiatives, they would really help. And I always think about home, the Eastern Cape, where I come from, and like, wow, this could work where I was born.
And I think what's fascinating with that for me, and again, thank you for kind of providing us with that insight. But I think what's fascinating is that you mentioned, when thinking about, what you want to do with the next stage in your career, about engaging with young people and inspiring young people. Well, if we have a generation of inspired thinkers, creative thinkers in South Africa, and the, entities like the European Union or other funding bodies that are out there can look for a pathway in order to engage with those young people that have those ideas and those creative thoughts about, the way that they can impact the environment around them, both from a socio-economic and environmental perspective. That's the perfect mix, isn't it, of inspired, creative young people who have the resources available to them to do things like, the great work that Mr. Fakela has done himself. Is that the kind of the magic mix, if you like, that you'd hope to see?
You know how satisfying it is when you put a seed in a soil and then you watch it grow. That's why I have immense and huge respect for farmers, because they're living it. Because we always look at the big corporations that they have to do this. Even individually, we have a responsibility to do something. We have a responsibility to a cleaner environment. We have a responsibility to self-sustainability. We have a responsibility to treat yourself with plot to plate kind of food. It's to someone who stays in Europe, that is luxury, because they pay pounds or dollars and euros for it. And whereas with us, we've got access to land and we've got access to water. That is something that we can get for free if we get our minds shaped in a way that Mr. Fakela is trying to do with the climate change chaps.
But I think and that was beautifully, and I love to finish these kind of shows with like a sense of like, a call to arms, if you like. And Tozama, that very much comes through. I think what you're describing, that sense of self-sustaining personal responsibility that one takes for the way that, you source your food, the way that you engage with the maintenance of your land, etc., etc. Those are lessons that, for example, I'm, based here in the UK. We need to re-engage with those concepts because
yes,
my partner actually, she works in the food industry here in the UK, and the UK is in a seriously precarious situation when it comes to our food security. We import so much of our food from Europe, and obviously with Brexit and with other kind of geopolitical issues going on, we are in a really dangerous position when it comes to food security. So I think what's fascinating is that I can hear it from a South African perspective that these are kind of key principles, but I think it can all be extrapolated and applied to the global experience. Like, we all need to get a bit more local with our thinking and a bit more clear about the way that we self-sustain. So, Tozama, I think it's a fantastic message for us to kind of conclude that section of our conversation on. I'm going to finish now. I can't believe how quickly this has gone. I hope you've felt that it's been a good conversation too, that's rattled by. But let me finish with the magic wand question. Tozama, if I was to hand you a magic wand and you could change one thing about the commercial world this instant, what would that one thing be?
it would be less greed and more compliance to the contracts that they have signed in terms of their responsibilities as corporates. So if you have a mining right or a clothing factory or car manufacturing, you sign a contract with the government that for me to maintain this license, I need to do the following things in order to be in compliance with the requirements of the government, so that there is trickle down benefits to the people, because those requirements are done so that people can benefit at the end of the day. But when greed overtakes, then people will underreport, will not comply, will not have an ethical and sustainable behavior towards the stakeholders, which is the government, their employees, and everyone. They will degrade the environment. They would know that if you have a clothing factory, you're not supposed to release this kind of water in a certain stream, because down the stream, there are people that are consuming this water. There is a farmer that is using this water to irrigate the vegetables. And it also boils down that do not take the advantage that sometimes the government or our government becomes overstretched in terms of monitoring your compliance. And then as a result of that, you take advantage because you're saying no one is watching. Be responsible and do what you said you are going to do, so that everyone benefits as a result of your actions.
Tozama, for those guests that come on and suggest something that seems so brilliantly well formed and compelling and reasonable, I give them a big hear at the end of the show. So you're very much getting a hear from me. I think that's a very reasonable suggestion, and in all honesty aligns perfectly with the work that we do at the Anti-Greenwash Charter, where obviously we're trying to hold organizations to account for what they say. So I think it's a brilliant magic wand suggestion, and one I would very much endorse myself. But Tozama, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I know that's felt like, from my perspective, that's rattled by, but I'm sure our listeners have got a lot from it. It was brilliant to have you on the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
And that brings to the end today's episode of The Responsible Edge. A heartfelt thank you to our guest, Tozama Kulati Siwisa, Executive Director and Head of Corporate Affairs at West Wits Mining, for sharing her deep expertise with us. Today, we explored the inspiring story of Thandisil Fatela, the South African entrepreneur behind Fatela Enviro Works, whose work is creating jobs, tackling climate change, and empowering youth through sustainability education. As a reminder, this episode was brought to you by the Anti-Greenwash Charter, championing responsible sustainability communications. Visit antigreenwashcharter.com to learn more. I'm Charlie Martin. Thanks for listening. And don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave us a review. See you next time.